You know, Noelle, if you'd just been more careful with the information you provided, none of this would be happening. That's what he said. Alden, my business partner, the man I'd trusted for a decade, standing there in the sleek, sunlit office we'd built together, his voice dripping with that condescending pity he'd perfected. And just like that, the floor didn't just fall out from under me, it evaporated. Because this wasn't some misplaced decimal point on a quarterly report. This was stage 3 ovarian cancer. And this was the denial letter from my insurance company, cold and crisp in my trembling hand, telling me I was on my own. It's funny, isn't it? Or maybe not funny, haha. But funny in that twisted, ironic way life sucker punches you when you're already down. You think you know someone. You build a dream with them, brick by metaphorical brick. Our marketing firm, Vance & Corbin Creative, wasn't just a name on a door in Portland. It was my lifeblood, my passion. We were small, but we were mighty, carving out a niche with innovative campaigns that had bigger agencies scrambling. I was Noelle Corbin, the dynamic one, the driven one, the one who could spin marketing gold from straw. At least that's who I thought I was. Then came the diagnosis. It started subtly, as these things often do. A persistent ache I dismissed as stress, a fatigue that coffee couldn't conquer. But then the tests, the hushed consultations, the doctor's careful, kind eyes delivering words that shattered my world into a million jagged pieces. Cancer. The word itself felt like an alien invader, something that happened to other people in sad movies. Not to me, not in the prime of my life. Alden at first was the picture of concern. "We're a team, Noelle," he'd said, his hand on my shoulder, his expression somber. "You focus on getting well. I'll hold down the fort." I remember clinging to those words, to the illusion of support, like a drowning woman to a raft. He assured me everything would be taken care of, that the company's top-tier health insurance, something we'd often boasted about to new hires, would cover everything. He even helped me fill out the initial claim forms, his penmanship neat and reassuring on the dotted lines. Or so I thought. The first round of chemotherapy was scheduled. I was terrified, obviously, but also armed with a weird sense of, I don't know, warrior spirit. Like, okay, universe, you want to throw this at me? Fine, let's dance. I was all set to go into battle, my metaphorical armor polished when the letter arrived. Plain white envelope, official looking. Inside, bureaucratic jargon swam before my eyes, but the message was brutally clear. Claim denied. Coverage terminated. Effective weeks ago. My blood ran cold. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error, something a few frantic phone calls could fix. So I called and called and called. Each conversation was a descent into a fresh circle of bureaucratic hell. "The policy was changed, ma'am." There were discrepancies in the enrollment information. "We show your coverage was voluntarily terminated by your employer." So, voluntarily terminated. By my employer, Alden and I were the employers. It made no sense. The weakness from the cancer was already seeping into my bones, a constant dull ache, a persistent nausea. But a new kind of sickness, a cold dread began to bloom in my gut. Suspicion. Ugly and unwelcome, but there it was. I started digging. Not literally, of course. I barely had the energy to get from my bed to the sofa. But I had my laptop. Late at night, when the pain kept me awake, I logged into the company's secure server, into the HR portal, into the insurance provider's online dashboard. My fingers, clumsy and slow, clicked through files, through scanned documents, through email archives. And there it was. A new insurance enrollment form dated just after my diagnosis. My signature, or a clumsy imitation of it, scrawled at the bottom. Information I'd never provided. Ticking boxes that opted for a cheaper, catastrophic-only plan for new enrollments. A plan that conveniently kicked in after my pre-existing condition would disqualify me. My old comprehensive policy marked as terminated by employee request with another forged signature. The dates, the timing, it was all too neat, too surgical. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. Confronting Alden wasn't dramatic, not at first. I managed to drag myself to the office, the effort leaving me breathless and shaking. He was on a call, looking important, waving me into his chair with a dismissive gesture. When he finally hung up, he gave me that practiced, concerned frown. "Noelle, you shouldn't be here. You should be resting." I laid the printed forms on his polished mahogany desk. "What is this, Alden?" My voice was raspy, weak. He glanced at them, his composure unwavering. "Looks like insurance paperwork. Something wrong. My signature is on these forms, Alden. Forms I've never seen. Forms that cancel my comprehensive health insurance and sign me up for a policy that doesn't cover a thing for me now." He picked one up, feigning close examination. Must be some sort of clerical error. You know how these insurance companies are. A clerical error that saves the company thousands a month. A clerical error that leaves me uninsured right when I'm about to start chemo. My voice started to rise, fueled by a desperate, sickening rage. He sighed, leaning back in his chair, the picture of beleaguered patience. "Noelle, you've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you just don't remember." And that's when he delivered that line. "You know, Noelle, if you'd just been more careful with the information you provided, none of this would be happening." The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated cruelty of it. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, not really. He was blaming me, implying I was incompetent, forgetful, the architect of my own destruction. He never explicitly said, "Yes, I forged your signature and canceled your insurance to save money while you fight for your life." He didn't have to. His eyes, cold and dismissive, said it all. "It was a cost-cutting measure," he mumbled, or maybe something about streamlining benefits. The words were just noise. The truth was a gaping wound in front of me. The man I'd built a business with, the man I'd considered a friend, had just signed my death warrant to save a few bucks. The depth of that betrayal. It's a chasm you can't comprehend until you're staring into it. It wasn't just about the money or the insurance. It was the casual stripping away of my dignity, my security, my trust in another human being, all while I was at my most vulnerable. I walked out of that office, or rather stumbled out, feeling like a ghost. The battle ahead wasn't just against cancer anymore. It was against him. And so the unraveling began, but so did my resolve. If I was going down, I wasn't going down without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of fear and fury. With my insurance gone, the planned intensive treatment was out. Poof, just like that. My oncologist looked at me with such pity, explaining the costs, the alternatives, the grim reality of pay-as-you-go cancer care in America. It's a world you don't want to know, believe me. A world of pre-approvals for even the most basic pain relief, of weighing the cost of a life-extending drug against keeping the lights on. I was getting sicker, visibly so. The kind of sick that makes people cross the street to avoid looking at you. The kind of sick that makes your own reflection a stranger. I started applying for medical assistance programs, filling out endless forms that asked for every humiliating financial detail of my life. Noelle Corbin, who once pitched million-dollar campaigns, was now begging for help. Friends, the few who hadn't scattered like scared pigeons, started a crowdfunding page. The kindness of strangers was a balm, but the shame of needing it was a constant bitter pill. Every donation, while deeply appreciated, felt like another nail in the coffin of my independence. But through the haze of pain and medication, a different kind of fire started to burn. Anger. Cold, hard, diamond-edged anger. Alden thought he could just erase me, discard me like a broken piece of office equipment. Oh, hell no. My new part-time job, when I wasn't at some underfunded clinic or curled up in a ball of nausea, became investigator. I was a marketing strategist, after all. I knew how to find patterns, how to connect dots. I meticulously gathered more evidence. I found the original insurance documents we'd signed when we first set up the company's stellar benefits package, the one Alden had been so proud of. I cross-referenced email chains where he'd discussed cost-cutting measures with our accountant, vague allusions to optimizing overheads, around the time my policy was changed. I found financial inconsistencies, small ones, but they painted a picture of someone siphoning funds, someone getting desperate. Every piece of data was a tiny shard of light in the suffocating darkness. Alden, of course, got wind of my activities. He must have. because then came the letter. Not from an insurance company this time, but from a fancy downtown law firm. A cease and desist, accusing me of defamation, of attempting to damage his reputation and the company's, threatening a lawsuit that would bury me in legal fees I couldn't possibly afford. The nerve of this man. He destroys my life, and I'm the one defaming him. I almost buckled. Almost. The fear was a living thing coiling in my stomach. But then I looked at the photo of me and my mom taken just before she lost her own battle with cancer years ago. Her smiling face full of fight. No, I wouldn't let him win. Finding a lawyer was another nightmare. It's a he said, she said. One told me his office opulent, his suit probably costing more than my rent. Forged documents are hard to prove. Mr. Vance is a respected businessman, another said, barely hiding his disdain for my clearly deteriorating appearance. Rejection after rejection. It felt like the whole world was allied with Alden with his money and his slick veneer of respectability. Then, through a referral from a support group, I found Sarah. Young, hungry, maybe a little less polished than the sharks Alden could afford, but her eyes, they had that same fire I felt in my own belly. She listened, really listened, her gaze never wavering as I laid out my story, my evidence spread across her cluttered desk. She believed me, and she was willing to take the case on contingency. The isolation was a heavy cloak. Colleagues from Vance and Corbin Creative suddenly became very busy when I called. Old industry contacts offered vague sympathies but no concrete help. It's a lonely road whistleblowing, especially when you're sick and broke. But every slammed door, every averted gaze just hardened my resolve. Sarah filed the lawsuit. There was no going back now. The day the trial began, I felt like I was walking into an arena. Alden was there, of course, looking tanned and prosperous, flanked by a team of lawyers who looked like they'd stepped out of a legal drama, all sharp suits and confident smiles. They exuded power. I had Sarah and the truth. I hoped it would be enough. The courtroom itself was intimidating, all dark wood and high ceilings, the stern-faced judge looking down from his perch like a god. My stomach churned. I felt small, outmatched. And honestly, I looked like hell. The chemo I'd managed to afford through assistance programs was taking its toll. My hair was thin, my skin was sallow, and I was relying on a cane some days just to stay upright. Alden's lawyers went to work immediately painting me as incompetent, a disgruntled former partner looking for a payday. They twisted my ambition into greed, my meticulous nature into obsessive vindictiveness. They brought in former colleagues, people I'd once mentored, who now testified about my erratic behavior and difficulty with details in the months leading up to my diagnosis. Lies. All of it. Calculated, cruel distortions. I watched my heart sinking as they carefully constructed this alternate reality where I was the villain. When it was my turn, Sarah presented our evidence. The forged documents, the email trails, the financial discrepancies. But Alden's lawyers were masters of obfuscation. They dissected every piece of paper, questioned every date implied, every signature could have been a mistake, a misunderstanding. Ms. Corbin, isn't it true you were under immense personal stress at the time? They'd ask, their voices dripping with false sympathy. Could your memory be unreliable? The cross-examination was brutal. They pushed and poked, trying to get me to break, to cry, to scream. They questioned my work ethic, my mental state, even my relationship with Alden, hinting at a spurned romantic interest that was pure fiction. Each question was a little death chipping away at my composure. I focused on Sarah's encouraging nods on the image of my mother's smile, and I answered as clearly as truthfully as I could, even when my voice shook. Then Alden took the stand. Oh, he was good. So convincing. The wrong partner betrayed by an unstable colleague. He spoke of his deep concern for me, his efforts to support me through my illness. He even managed to shed a tear or two when talking about how devastated he was by my accusations. The judge, I could tell, was wavering. His gaze on me grew more skeptical with each of Alden's carefully rehearsed lines. The air in the courtroom felt thick, heavy with impending defeat. I could see the smirk playing on Alden's lips when he thought no one was looking. He thought he had won. My hope, which had been a flickering candle, was sputtering about to be extinguished. I felt exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. This was it. He was going to get away with it. In the public gallery, a young woman had been present for most of the trial. I'd noticed her occasionally, a quiet figure with serious eyes. She often frowned as she looked at documents, sometimes her own, sometimes copies of evidence. I dismissed her as a law student, perhaps, or just a curious onlooker. She had kind, observant eyes. But in that moment, as despair washed over me, I barely registered her presence. The judge was shuffling his papers, clearing his throat, preparing to deliver what I was sure would be a ruling in Alden's favor. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Alden was practically preening. His lawyers exchanged smug glances. I closed my eyes, bracing for the final blow. And then a voice, clear, surprisingly firm. Your Honor, I think I have something to say about those insurance forms. Every head in the courtroom swiveled. Standing in the gallery was the young woman, Lena Hayes, as I would soon learn her name. She looked nervous but determined, clutching a folder to her chest. The judge, clearly startled, frowned. And who might you be, young lady? My name is Lena Hayes. Your Honor, I'm a registered nurse. I work in hospital administration, specifically with insurance processing. A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. Alden's lead counsel was on his feet instantly. Objection, Your Honor. This is highly irregular. This person is not on any witness list. But the judge, his curiosity piqued, held up a hand. Ms. Hayes, what is it you think you know about these forms? Lena took a deep breath. Your Honor, I've been following this case. I saw copies of the contested insurance documents that were submitted as evidence, and I recognized something. The signature, it's a forgery, a bad one at that. Alden scoffed loudly. His lawyer interjected, Your Honor, this is absurd. She's not a handwriting expert. No, Lena said, her voice gaining strength. I'm not, but I process hundreds of these forms every month. The specific form used for Ms. Corbin's alleged voluntary termination and the new, cheaper policy enrollment. It's an older version, one our hospital network stopped accepting over a year before the date on that document because it lacked certain updated compliance clauses. We were instructed to shred any remaining old stock. No legitimate insurance processor or HR department would have been using that outdated version for a new enrollment or a policy change at that time. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Lena continued. Furthermore, the ink on the signature, particularly on the termination form, it's a specific type of quick-dry ink often used in official stamps, not typically what someone uses for a personal signature on such a document. And the way the patient information is entered on the new policy application, it's inconsistent with standard data entry protocols for that specific insurer. Small things maybe, but they scream fraud to someone who handles these documents day in and day out. She opened her folder and, with the judge's permission, approached the bench. She laid out examples of current legitimate forms, pointing out the differences, the subtle security features on the newer versions, the standard ink types. She even had internal memos from insurance companies about the phasing out of the old forms. Her explanations were clear, concise, and devastatingly precise. The judge examined the documents, then looked at Alden's lawyers, then at Alden. The tide hadn't just turned. A tsunami had just crashed into Alden's carefully constructed facade. Sarah, my lawyer, was quick to seize the moment, requesting the original documents be re-examined by a court-appointed expert in light of this new information. The judge, his expression now grim, agreed immediately. And that's when Alden snapped. The mask of the concerned, wronged partner didn't just slip, it shattered. His face contorted into a mask of pure fury. He lunged not towards me, but towards Lena. "You lying little bitch!" He screamed, his voice raw with rage. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I'll destroy you!" It was terrifying. He was like a wild animal. Bailiffs and court officers were on him in an instant, wrestling him back, subduing him as he thrashed and cursed. The courtroom erupted into chaos. His lawyers looked horrified, their faces pale. The suave confidence was gone, replaced by a dawning, sickening realization that their client had just self-destructed in the most spectacular way possible. Order was eventually restored, but the damage to Alden was done irreparable. Lena's testimony, combined with Alden's violent outburst, was the nail in his coffin. The subsequent expert examination of the documents confirmed everything Lena had suspected. The forms were indeed outdated, the signatures clear forgeries. The judge didn't take long to deliver his ruling. Alden Vance was found liable for fraud, for malicious intent, for causing grievous harm. The fines were heavy, $250,000, and I was awarded significant damages enough to cover my medical expenses, past and future, enough to give me a chance to rebuild my life. The company board, shocked by the revelations and the public disgrace Alden had brought upon them, moved swiftly to oust him. Vance and Corbin Creative would become Corbin Creative once I was well enough. Relief. It washed over me in a wave so powerful it left me shaking. Tears streamed down my face, not of sorrow or pain, but of sheer unadulterated release. It was over. I had won. Justice, a concept that had felt so abstract, so unattainable, was real. As soon as I could, I found Lena. She was standing quietly to one side, a little overwhelmed by the commotion she'd caused. I threw my arms around her, not caring about the cane I nearly dropped, not caring about the tears soaking her shoulder. "Thank you," I sobbed. "Oh my God, thank you. You saved my life." She just smiled a kind, gentle smile. "I just did what was right," she said. "I couldn't stand by and watch an injustice happen. My own mother went through a terrible time with insurance errors once. I know how devastating it can be. And that right there, that's the humanities lesson, isn't it? In a world that can be so cruel, so consumed by greed and self-interest. Like Alden, there are also Lenas. People who, for no other reason than their own innate decency, will step up. People who understand that our systems, our rules, our pieces of paper are only as good as the morality of the people wielding them. She didn't know me. She had nothing to gain. But she saw wrong, and she spoke up. That's courage. That's humanity. 1 year later, I'm sitting on my porch. The Oregon sunshine feels warm on my skin. My hair has grown back, still a bit shorter than it used to be, but it's mine. The cancer is in remission. The doctors use words like optimistic and excellent prognosis. I still have checkups, of course, and there's always that little shadow of what if. But mostly I feel whole, healthy. On the small table beside my wicker chair, there's a framed photo. It's me and Lena taken a few months after the trial. We're both smiling, arm in arm. She's become a dear friend, a reminder of the unexpected goodness that can bloom even in the darkest of times. She didn't just save my life in a courtroom. She restored a piece of my faith in people. I look out at my small garden, at the roses just beginning to bud. Life is different now, quieter, more deliberate. The ordeal stripped away so much, but it also revealed what truly matters. Resilience. I've learned isn't about not falling. It's about how you get back up even when your legs are shaking, even when the world has kicked you down. And sometimes you get up with a little help from an unexpected angel. I take a deep, peaceful breath. The air is fresh, clean. A small, knowing smile plays on my lips. I survived. More than that, I fought, I endured, and I reclaimed not just my health and my finances, but my story. And that, my friends, is a victory worth more than all the money in the world. How do you find today's story? Leave a comment below. If you like this video, please like and share. Especially don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our interesting and exciting stories.